I was born a Catholic. Living a life as an atheist, like God was never truly present. One of the nuns kind of noticed that my life at home was difficult, and she took me under her wing. I remember this one time she gave me a Bible. My mother burnt it in front of me. You just have to let God in just for a minute. If you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. He'll just keep working at you. My name is Missen. I live here in Sydney with my wife and my 17-year-old son Chase, and my wife's name is Louise, and my daughter Tia, who's 24, lives up on the Central Coast. I wasn't a cradle Catholic. I was actually born into an atheist family. My parents divorced when I was only 2 years old, and I didn't really get to know my dad until I was probably in my late teens, probably when I was 18 or 19. And it was a really difficult life. My mother was a very strict, authoritarian kind of person, and it was a hard life. We spent a lot of time moving from state to state, going to lots of different schools, so it was hard to establish relationships as well. And you know, that was just the life that we lived, and not having my biological father in my life, that always played on me. My mother got remarried again, probably when I was 2 or 3, probably close to 3. And even though I had a relationship with my stepdad, it wasn't the kind of relationship that a father and son would normally have. So I relied very heavily on my brothers. But yeah, living a life as an atheist, like God was never truly present. So there was that void, you know, of not having those bigger rules in your life that kind of guided you and nurtured you. You kind of always went with what your mum or your dad said. So, you know, just moving around, it was a hard life. And at times she wasn't a nice person. I don't have a relationship with her now. And she was at times violent and abusive, and that started to shape who I was. She sent us to Catholic schools, and it seems kind of oxymoronic because we're atheists. Why on earth would we go to a Catholic school? And my mother, Lynn, made it quite clear that we're there for the discipline and not the education on faith. So I always knew that God existed because I heard about it, but it's not something that would dwell on. And if that was a subject that I failed at school, that would be the only acceptance of failure that my mother would actually allow for. Everything else had to be like on point, and you had to be disciplined and strict. But talking about God at home, that was taboo. Like bringing a Bible home, that was not on. And so my relationship with my mother broke down in my teens, in my very early teens, and it was difficult. I was out of home for a while from the age of 14 and back and forth again. And being a juvenile, the laws were a lot different back then. So going to Catholic schools, I think in my earlier years, some of the schools that were run by brothers and nuns. And one of the nuns kind of noticed that my life at home was difficult, and she took me under her wing. And you know, it was really heartwarming for someone who didn't know me just to embrace me with love and kindness and compassion. I didn't have fear when I was around her. And I remember this one time she gave me a Bible, and she said, just read it. And I didn't know how to read. She goes, just open it anywhere. And so I took it home, and my mother had this routine of when we got home, we had to empty our bags, and she found this Bible and said, what's this? And I said, it's a Bible that the nun from school gave it to me. And like, I got in the biggest amount of trouble, and she threw it out, and I was devastated. I'm thinking, I'm going to get in trouble at school now. Like the sister's given me this, and I don't have it. And so I went back to school the next day, and she said, come on, we'll go and sit down, we'll have a chat. She goes, get your Bible out. And I was terrified. I didn't want to tell her I didn't have it. And she said, where's your Bible? And I told her my mother threw it out. And I said, I'm so sorry. She goes, it's okay. There's plenty of them. It's the most published book in the world. I've got more. And she gave me another one. And so I took that one home too. And this time I copped the flogging of my life, and my mother burnt it in front of me. And part of me just felt a little bit destroyed. I just thought, how can you do this? Like, I knew that the Bible was a very sacred thing, but people like honour the Bible and they guard it with their life, and which I do now. But back then, to her, it was just a book. So she had no connection to it, and for her to burn it was nothing. So I went back to school again, and I said to the nun, I said, look, you can't give me another one. And she goes, why not? I said, it's forbidden in my home. And she said, well, why are you coming to a Catholic school? And I explained, well, it's for the discipline. I come from a very, very strict family, and this is why I'm here. It's for the discipline and the education, but not for faith. I don't think I can keep meeting with you anymore. And so I think the word kind of got around between the other brothers and the nuns, but they kind of took me under their wing. And it was hard to talk to my siblings because they were straight down the line atheists, but something has started to stir inside me, just the way a mustard seed, so small, can mean so much if you just give it time, if you nurture it and you love it and you give it everything that it needs. So I think way back then in my school days, that seed had been planted, but I never really tended to it much. I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't try and discover it more because I knew the consequences at home would be pretty serious. So I just continued to live my life. We kept on moving around. My mother was not a nice person. I didn't have a great relationship with my stepfather, and we lived what we thought would be a normal life. So then growing up into my teens, I moved out of home when I was pretty young. I lived in and out of refuges because the conditions at home were unbearable. And, you know, I kind of relied on friends a lot to stay at their home and on their lounge, and it's like bed hopping, so to speak. You go from one mate's house to another, and I felt really empty, like there was a massive void in my life. So I kind of led a life creating my own path, trying to determine my own fate, my own future, my own history. And so at the age of 17, I decided to join the Australian Army, and the decision to do that was multifaceted. One, I thought, you know, it's a great opportunity to serve my country, and there's a great deal of respect and honour with that. But I think the bigger reason was I figured, you know, I had friends who had joined the military, and they're saying, you know, you get a roof over your head, and you get your 3 square meals a day, and you get free medical and free dental and free optical and all your uniforms supplied. And I thought, well, that's what I need. I don't really have a job. I don't really have any money. And I was struggling to provide for myself. And at some points throughout your life, you begin to realise that if you don't have a job and you're not saving money, then you don't really have much of a future ahead of you unless you're planning. But I'd never been taught to plan. I didn't have that guidance. I didn't have that structure of a loving family. So these are the things that you need to do in life to be successful. My education was poor because of a broken family. I remember on Sundays that the corporals would line us up and they'd say, right, who's religious? And a bunch of guys and girls would put their hand up and say, right, you guys go over there. And they'll march them off. And I think, well, where are they going? And they wouldn't come back for like an hour and a half. And the rest of us, we had to stay back in the lines, and we'll be cleaning, we'll be polishing, we'll be doing all this extra work, we'll be mopping floors and polishing brass that we only just polished probably a few hours ago that was already clean. I didn't figure out why we had to polish it again. But then everyone came back and I said, well, where are you guys been? He said, oh, we went to church. I went, all right. And I kind of brushed it off. But then it was happening each Sunday. I think, how is this fair? Like, because you're religious, you get to go away and you get to speak to the padres, you get like soft drink, and you get to watch TV, and you get to read books, and you know what's happening in the outside world. And all the while, we're back here and we're cleaning up your mess and everyone else's mess. And I didn't think that was fair. I thought, I'm doing all this extra work for nothing. So I made this decision that one Sunday, we're lining up again outside the lines, and the corporals go, right, who's religious? And so I sheepishly just put my hand up. And they said, right, you lot over there. And my mates are looking at me going, bro, you're not religious. Like, what are you doing? And I'm just quiet, just let me do my thing. And so I went with the other lot, and we marched up to the church. And like, they've got 3 kind of chapels on the base at Kapuka. And they said, well, what religion are you? And I went, I think I'm Catholic. And because I think I remember seeing that on my birth certificate and said, right, you go on that one. And so I kind of went in there and mass started and I had no idea. Like I was totally lost. They were standing up, they were kneeling down, they were praying, they were doing the sign of the cross, they were doing all these things. And I just clearly out of my depth, I thought, I've got no idea what's happening here. But that started to stir something else inside of me. Like when you hear things often enough, you start to believe it's true. Going to church on a Sunday at Kapuka and you're hearing things more, saying you are loved, you are worthy, you are so much more than what you can be. You start to believe it. And to speak to the priests who are really calm and really gentle, and they're like counselors, they're like a father figure, they give you that emotional support. They go, you know what, you can do this, you're nearly there, you're nearly finished, just keep at it. That kind of encouragement I was never used to. I didn't know at the time they were conditioning me. So to have that time with the padres where they put their hand on your shoulder and say, can I pray for you? You don't know how to answer that, but you go, okay. You feel something. Words are hard to explain. It's a magical kind of feeling, but you feel something wash over you. That was the beginning of a journey of coming to know him. No longer was I on a path on my own. God had set a new path before me, and I just need to take the time to make the decision to choose a different path. So I finished at Kapuka and I was starting to work my way through my career. I started off in Armoured Corps, driving tanks, APCs and ASLABs. And it was great. It was lots of fun. I'm doing boy stuff. I'm blowing stuff up and out the bush, like camping and getting paid for it. And people around me just being very, very supportive. And for a few years, I went on my corporal's course with a good mate of mine. By then, I was with the military police at Holsworthy. And my mate Justin said to me, he goes, you know, I'm just going to go back to my place after course, and my girlfriend's coming over. She's bringing a friend. How about we just cook the girls' dinner? I thought, that'd be great. Like I just need the time down. And that's where I met Louise, and we had this instant kind of connection. Like I'd never really met anyone like her before. Just a kind, gentle soul that she was interested in me. Like she didn't just want to talk about herself. She was really engaged in whatever I had to say. And I just thought, like, who is this person? I've never met anyone like her. And so we started hanging out more, and I guess you can call it, we were dating. And then at one point she said, well, Mum and Dad would like to invite you over for dinner. I thought, okay, we're taking that step. This is exciting, but nerve-wracking. I've never had to formally meet someone's parents before. But yeah, let's do this. I can do it with a good feed. So we went, and she said, oh, by the way, my family's very Catholic, and you know that you walk in the door and there's the cross and on the wall, and they prayed before dinner, and I kind of sat there thinking, well, what do I do? Like I can't join in. I don't know how to pray. I don't even know how to do the sign of the cross properly. And then she said, you know, we're going to go to Mass. Would you like to come? I went, you know what? I'd like to. So, and they were living at Milpera at the time, and their parish was St. Luke's Catholic Church at Revesby. And that's still Louise's parish to this very day after, I'm not going to say how old she is, but it's been her whole life. But we went along, and the parish priest at the time was Father Jeffrey Plant. And so I walked in, and I'm kind of just following the lead of what everyone else was doing. And then Father started his homily, and it blew my mind. He was, you know, he's got these little videos, and he's doing all these voices, and he was very animated. I said to Louise, you know, this is just like story time for adults, but I'm hooked. I didn't know church was like this. Like, I've walked past 1,000 churches, and never once did I think to step inside. Not once. Like, it was too overwhelming, too confusing. I didn't know what to expect. But the funny thing was, after Mass, just people I didn't even know, like part of the church community, just came up and And they want to know me. They introduce themselves, and next thing you know, I'm being invited to barbecues and, hey, we'll exchange numbers and, we'll go out for a beer or whatever else. And I thought, you don't know me, why would you? And I come to realise that that's a church family. Through your struggles, through everything, they're there to support you. And they want to celebrate your wins with you. They want to celebrate your birthday. They want to congratulate you when your child does well or you've had an anniversary. And I thought, I've been missing out on this my whole life. And that void that I felt, I started to feel that it was being filled. And I thought, no, I need more of this. And so I developed a great relationship with her dad. Like we used to go on walks together. We'd sit down and have like a port. He was a big fan of port. And we'd just talk. And, he really nurtured my faith. And he goes, well, what do you want from this? And I said, well, I want more. But I felt selfish in saying that. I felt like I'm just taking. I thought, well, there's got to be something I can do to give back, but I want to learn as well. So I decided I'll become a catechist. I had time off and I became a catechist because I thought this is a great way to learn about my faith in a very, very simplistic way, but then share that with young minds, like kids who are in kindergarten and year 1 and year 2. And I thought, well, I can do this and not kind of look silly. I felt maybe I was going to be judged because someone in their 20s who goes to church should know more than what I knew. So back in 2005, I was working for the New South Wales government in law enforcement, and it was at the time of the Cronulla riots, and myself and 2 colleagues were given a deployment, and I wasn't sure about the deployment, so I did kind of question it a little bit, but throughout the course of that, my colleagues and I were involved in a situation where we were set upon by a large group of individuals, and essentially we copped the hiding of our lives. We were greatly outnumbered, and I received a lot of horrific injuries. And it was career-ending. I had fractures, I had busted jaw and part of my skull, I busted my knee, my hearing. I was in a brace from my hip to my ankle for a while. I had to walk with a walking stick. I had to learn to adjust to not being able to hear properly. But the surgeries, the physio, the rehab, it was a lot to deal with. And at the time, Louise was pregnant with Chase. So there's a lot of things I couldn't do, but I went from being what I believe to be a brave person, coming from the Australian Army, everything that I learnt, to being totally fearful of everyone and everything. I didn't want to leave the house. If we did leave the house, I had to go to the same place on the same parking level, and I just had to know where I was going. I just wanted to get in and out. And there'll be times where we'll walk into a shopping centre and just the smell would trigger a memory or just an emotion. I said, Louise, can we leave? She goes, but we just got here. And I went, I've got to go. She goes, but Bruce, we just got here. We just drove here. We've got things to do. And I went, sorry, I've got to go. And I'll be panicking. I'll be sweating. I'll be starting to have an anxiety attack, and you feel like your heart's about to explode. And it was tough on her. Even though she was supporting me through everything, because my income dropped, and so here she is, a new mum, having to go back to work weeks after our son was born. It wasn't fair on her. She didn't have that opportunity to, just be with her newborn baby and to be a mum and to develop that relationship. She had to find the time in between taking care of me and taking care of a baby and working. I don't know how she did it, but she's an absolute warrior. I don't think I can think of other words. I said over 4 years, over 30 operations, and not all of them were close. Some were out at Nepean and Penrith, some were towards Canterbury, and some were here and there. And so here she's travelling, and I'm not there to help her, load the car with a pram and a baby and everything. She's doing it on her own.
So when Bruce went through the accident where he was attacked at Bankstown Station, a lot of things actually changed. He stopped actually praying. He stopped really being close to God, which was very hard for me. I've always been very close to God, even through all of my struggles in life. And I found it really confusing of why he was letting go so easily. I guess my upbringing was a lot easier than what his was. So for me to actually understand that, I couldn't. He struggled quite a lot, not only with relationships with myself and also his children, but also with God. Also work was really difficult. He wasn't able to work at the time. So he didn't really feel like he had a purpose. So making sure that he came back to God was a really big change in his life, because it gave him back that purpose, reminding himself that he's a child of God, that God made him for a reason, and that we're all here to actually build the kingdom of God. So he was able to find that in different ways, such as the catechist, being an acolyte, and eventually having the men's group. So I think one big thing was bringing him back to prayer, starting off by having just a little prayer each day, not expecting him to do a full rosary at the beginning, but just having that simple prayer of, Jesus, I trust in you. Being able to be open to God and understanding where God is in that situation. So I definitely think by planting that seed and opening himself up really brought Christ into his life and started him back on the journey back to God.
Father Jeffrey Plant is an amazing and remarkable person. He was the first priest that I really got to know personally. He was our parish priest at St. Luke's at Revesby, I think, for close to 12 years. And, he's like laser vision. He's so in tune with his parishioners. And he was the one that kind of encouraged me to become a catechist. And I asked him about it. I said, well, what's a catechist? He goes, well, you go into public schools and you teach religion. I said, Father, how on earth can I do that? I said, I'm here to learn. I know nothing. How can I teach kids? And he goes, oh, well, we've got this program that you can do, and it's pretty basic. And so, I thought, I'll give it a go. And then, just like if you give Jesus an inch, he'll take a mile. Father Jeff was the same. You give him an inch, he'll take everything. And then he just starts inviting him, hey, look, I've got this job that I need a hand with. Do you mind helping me? And you say, sure, Father, I'll do that. And he takes that time just to get to know you more. And he's like an archaeologist. He's just excavating away, just getting to know the core of who you are and what's going on in your life. And he takes time to pray for you, but then he takes time to give you opportunities to grow your faith. He is someone that you can go to and you can talk to and you can listen to, and he gives you that advice that you seek. And if you have questions, he'll answer, no matter how silly they may seem. He knew that I wasn't a cradle Catholic, so I had a lot of questions. And I thought at some point he's going to say, you know what, man, you asked too many questions, but it never was that. He embraced everything, absolutely everything, and he nurtured my growth. He showed in me that he had confidence in me, and he helped build my own confidence in myself. My faith journey is exactly that. It's my faith journey, but I'm not alone. It's not a race. It's not a competition. No matter at what point you are in your life that you come to know God, the time that you come to know God is the right time. That my journey right now is a journey to heaven with my family. I don't know how much long I have left in my life, and I hope it's a lot of years, but the journey that I'm on, I know God's going to be on it with me, and so is my family.
Are you searching for purpose of life? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.